I'm Marina Orsini-Jones. I know a few of you. Hello. Those of you who don't know me, I'm actually just been appointed Associate Head of Department. Congratulations. In English and Languages at Coventry University. But I always, those who know me, they know I've always been very interested in doing computer assisted language learning back in the 80s, and it became other things, VLEs, 90s, and now we're moving into computer-mediated communication, global world, and digital literacy, and many other things. That's me.
I'm Elwyn. I'm a TEFL teacher trainer, and I have taught a little bit of Spanish in the past, which is obviously one of the reasons why I was interested in the MexCo project.
I'm Gwenola. I'm a lecturer in French, but I also took part in this project because I was teaching academic English to my students in French.
My name's Zoe. I'm an English language teacher. I used to teach in Mexico, but at Coventry I joined as a master's student. So I joined as a research assistant to the project, and obviously because I studied and taught in Mexico, that's my background. And my master's dissertation is based on this research, which I submitted last week. So
we can talk about it. Okay, so what is MexCo? Just to give you a flavour of it, what Zoe did, she did a world cloud, and as you can see, it really reflects what's happened in the pilot, which was our first phase. So we are us from Coventry. We have Teresa McKinnon, who can't be here because she's busy presenting in other places. And she's helped us with deciding on affordances and tools, and we're still discussing what to do. And we have Felipe Bustos and Beatriz Vera Lopez from Mexico City, who are very interested in the agency of the learner. And a kind of, for those of you who study a bit of master's level theories, Kumarava di Velu, I think I said it correctly, the idea of contextualized learning, that learners grow organically their interests. And you start from this learner's interests or the staff's interest, and then you grow out of that. Okay, so it is VLE supported. Moodle, we've gone through everything. We have WebCT and Blackboard, and now with Moodle. It doesn't cost anything, allegedly. And then we also have used the ePortfolio Mahara. We hope to show you briefly how that was used, new to us. So more digital literacies, we used to use Pebble Pad, but now we use Mahara. And it is funded by the Higher Education Academy with the Teaching Collaborative Grant. Okay? So we receive a nice bit of money, which is allowing us to do some interesting things, like getting a research assistant. Okay, so over to Gwenola now.
Okay, so this is our homepage. This may look like a traditional Moodle homepage, but it's actually located in our research area, but it's Moodle supported. As you might notice straight away, you might see on the screenshot that you've got here that we've got two appellations. We've got first MexCo language exchange, and then right in the middle, we've got MexCo intercultural exchange. We decided to keep it like this to show you the shift that occurred because we moved from a traditional language exchange to an intercultural exchange. We'll explain this to you in a little bit. We've had also another shift. You might also notice that we've got three languages that are present here. We've got English, introduce yourself, Spanish, and French. The reason why we decided to incorporate French is because on this particular module we had students of English, Spanish, and French. And obviously French students felt a little bit disengaged. So when we talked to our partners, we realized that we have, or they also have, students in French in Mexico. And so we decided to integrate this third language. Both and three languages together were used through the forum. In particular, I will show you this again later.
Okay, and we'll talk more about the module this is attached to as an optional thing which is assessment, so students are not to be assessed in this. And what we brought from the Mexican partners is this identification of the learners that I mentioned before. So trying to make sense of your foreign language experience and culture first hand, that's the important thing, which is why we wanted it to be student driven and organically grow. We didn't really want to intervene much we did a minimum intervention to see in the first phase what would emerge organically from the exchange. And I already mentioned postmodern and post methods and approaches. So meta-reflection being quite important. We'll talk more about that because we've seen various models of intercultural awareness and intercultural community competence. And meta-reflection is missing in some, as is the dimension of digital and global, which we talk about later. So if you just move on, in terms of aim, so the idea was to have an online, now the terminology, evolving, changing, what do we call this? Telecollaboration, if you're John Robert O'Dowd. CMC, if you're in the States, computer-mediated communication. Global network learning is Rubin, who is not a linguist by this, with a lot of linguists in New York, and he has a big environment dealing with these things. So it's effectively real learning, where students doing real learning from each other to something which is assessed in the two countries and is relevant to their syllabus. But we're still not sure where to go. Even if, in Europe we should stick with telecollaboration probably. Right, now over to Zoe, who will tell you from her students' point of view also why, oh yes, I forgot the processes. I just let you look at them, because here I just wanted perhaps 1 minute. What is intercultural communication to you? Just for the person sitting next to you, 1 minute. 1 minute.
Despite coming from different backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, with different sounds, different perception of the world, and still trying to
Stop, sorry. Okay. Thank you very much. I will expand later on threshold concepts, which are quite a meaty, big concepts. So they're nothing to do with the Council of Europe and thresholds and language levels, something else. Over to Zoe.
Okay, so at Coventry University, the mission statement is to develop more global graduates. So I came into the project as a Coventry University student, a master's student. We looked at how we could make our students in the language department become more intercultural and develop these skills that were seen to be required in the workplace today. The project, or the research project, started with Byram, so we went back to his intercultural community competence and how we could develop this in our field. We looked at the Council of Europe and how they developed the assessment for these community competences. Also at Coventry, digital literacies is a key theme, as well as developing these graduate skills. Going back to Byram, I'm going to pass on to Gwenola and her French to describe it a little bit more.
She pronounces them better.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if you're familiar with Byram, but Byram studied in France and is now influential here in Britain, but also back in France. He's, for example, studied at Universidad Paris-Descartes. Byram added philosophical element to intercultural learning. In order to have to understand a little bit better this philosophical element, what Byram really is for people to have a deep understanding of the other culture that you are going to communicate with before actually starting communicating with this other culture. So it is for the development of an intercultural conscience. In order to achieve this intercultural conscience, you have different steps. The first step is savoir. Savoir, used as a noun, knowledge. The knowledge first of your own culture, but not only your culture, but yourself as well, how you behave when you're with other people, especially with other cultures. Once you gain an understanding of who you are, you need to savoir-être, knowing how to be, knowing how to behave with other people, again, from different cultures. So this is the personal sphere. Once you have an understanding of your own personal sphere and your own cultural sphere, then you can move on to savoir comprendre, knowing how to understand aspects of the other culture. Again, this is still very personal and very cultural. When you have a look at these two different cultures, we're not talking about communicating yet. Only then, after you've understood your own culture and the other culture, then you can move on to savoir apprendre and savoir s'engager, knowing how to learn and knowing how to commit yourself, knowing how to handle this knowledge when you are communicating with the other people of the other culture. But Byram has actually been critiqued, so we're going to talk about this now.
So Byram developed his ICC in the 90s, and that was obviously before a lot of these global communication networks. Guggenheim, they moved it further along, and what we wanted to do was have a look at our students. We gave them the BLE and we left them completely alone, and to see what their idea of culture was. Exactly what is culture? We're taking the Byram out of the EU context, which it originated from, and obviously in the UK, what is culture is quite a difficult question anyway, when you're describing such a multicultural society. So in the pilot, we had a lot of reflections. They had a data exchange, and some of these feedbacks came up, which Alan is going to go through a little bit with you.
Okay, so here we've got some slides with some feedback from the students in Mexico. I should point out that we've copied and pasted them, so any spelling mistakes are the students, not ours. But the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. In fact, some of it possibly excessively so. And it made us think about Hofstede's dimensions, cultural dimensions. Now, I know Hofstede's ideas are controversial, but this quote in particular made us think about the power-distance dimension. And according to the Hofstede Center website, Mexico has got a very high score on the power-distance dimension, 81, which suggests that people in this society accept hierarchies without any sort of justification. And we wondered if this is a little manifestation of an acceptance of Britain and British culture as high up in a hierarchy. I think, does it need translating? No.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it's just the important bit is it's very good to talk with somebody from a place or a country as important as England. That's the interesting bit. Yes, it's just the blue bit. Yeah, we concentrate on the blue bit.
Okay, yeah, and again, more positive feedback here. One of the Mexican students has pointed out how he or she found it a great place to have contact with the real English, not just the sort of abstract, out-of-a-book English that they do in the classroom. Okay, so it was all very positive.
Okay, now, what do we do then? First year undergraduate students, 150 of them, taking English, Spanish and French, English even literature, English linguistics, so pure English degrees, English and creative writing, English and journalism, French and international relations, Spanish and international relations, Spanish and no business, not yet, but we have next year. So it's just a big mixture of students, and we wanted them to be aware together about the realities of intercultural awareness. Funny interesting thing, so we proposed some tasks. For example, it was November, so it was Halloween, it was Guy Fawkes, it was also Bonfire Night, and all sorts of things. And very interestingly, the literature people developed that with the Mexican students interested in literature into learning objects about Stephen King created with April Folio Mahara. We'll just show you one example or two of what they created. And these are the themes which emerge, and the aims of the module then, wait, I said fast, but not that fast. So the idea of project work, digital and presentation skills, 50% of what they did for this, which was 10 cards all together as a module, 5 credits for that is the project, the intercultural project. Optional, we don't force everybody to do it, because that would be against our principles. But we offer the chance, if you want to do it, it's there, you can engage. They all sign ethical consent forms and we proceeded that way. Yes? Someone? Right. Now, I know that Mahara, not all of you know about Mahara. Mahara Portfolio is a kind of more web-looking side of the e-portfolio. I used to use PebblePad, which was very close, very much enclosed, and very much kind of 80s toolbooky. But it allowed me to have total control. Mahara, the student has total control. We don't even have a gateway to share, which creates some issues. But on the other hand, if you just start clicking on some of the examples, right, what does the student do then? Fascinating things. Now, it's not just the culture discussed on the forum, what the Mexicans thought the culture was. Because what our students in our place think about culture, and our students are multicultural, which the Mexican students were not expecting. The Mexican students were talking about other things, and our students, some Romanian, some Bulgarian, some Pakistani who have come to live here at a certain stage, or some from a very strong Pakistani background. So very mixed culture, which was quite a surprise to the Mexicans. And so, but also to us, what is culture to our students? The Beatles and the X Factor. Or, if you switch to the next one, all right, this is an interesting one as well. This how they work together to show you. They use Skype, not just the VLE. They use Prezi. I don't know about Prezi. So this is again what I used to do. My students always bring something I don't know into the equation. They also, you can't see this, but it's very fascinating how they display to the Mexicans how they work with pen and paper. So even if they're using Prezi, Mahara, the VLE, they still think they work with pen and paper. And there were some chocolates and some sweets. So the effective Maslow area of the student being represented. And the next one, that's the student from Mexico. And then, fascinating enough, what the student thought was culture in Coventry doesn't really tie with the guidebooks, really, necessarily. The Air Museum is a sad place. They like it. They've been there, they like it. So it's also a perception for us. Gives us ideas of how we can market Coventry, because we never thought about these things ourselves. Very interesting. So next one is the most fascinating of all, because here we have the Guy Fawkes, Halloween, and the Queen. And it's trilingual, so we got a bit in English, we got a bit in French there. If you click the links, there's a bit in Spanish as well, so this group decided to go to 3 languages. Again, interesting how they did it and how fascinating it was. So, the best one is this. The Mexicans were obsessed with British food. What is British food like? What do English people eat? Can you give some recipes, some cuisine? And the best our students could come up with was okay, okay, and when do I go to something about the French Free Colleges? Or we can move on.
No, yes, I mean, what fascinated me is that I wasn't expecting students to write in the 3 languages, to do their project in the 3 languages, especially as we didn't highlight on this at all. Marina did say either French, either Spanish, either English, or you can take 2 languages, but we were really surprised to see 3 languages in their project.
Okay, I'm going to anticipate the slide now because I can see Vicky looking at the watch. Threshold concepts, if you go to the slide a bit further down, is a new educational transactional theory, which comes from education more than linguistics. And it's about transforming ontologically while you also learn new epistemes, new language, new things to deal with language. So the discursive dimension of the things the students were saying is very fascinating. But it's also the way they changed on the forum and in Skype and the communication they were having. So critical incidents, Zoe, I think this was very interesting.
I went through all the data as part of my research job, and I came across this one which we called Student G. He asks his students, I'm creating a blog about Coventry, what do you want to know about Coventry? And the Mexican student replies, well, what shouldn't I miss from Coventry? Are there archaeological zones? And the student, he goes, no, I mean things like you do for fun, like play football, or maybe where you like to go to fun. And here, the thread finishes. So you can see that because of this miscommunication, that they've lost this whole thread, and this friendship that he kind of just started is gone. So this is how we come into the threshold concepts and what happened to Student G afterwards.
And then we've got the transformational element of threshold concept. So threshold concept brings you into liminal zone. This student was very liminal, perhaps this side of the thresholds in terms of intercultural awareness. Didn't know. He's probably quite blunt, he's sporty, he likes his pub. He doesn't even know that we have an archaeological site next to the university because he's not from Coventry, he's from London. And besides, he's not interested in archaeology. But there's a shift here, and it's so exciting. Because, if you just read this, now this person is making an effort. He's realized the thread is dead. He's realized he's lost a Mexican friend. He's realized he didn't write with the right language. The discourse was not right. It was aggressive, was not polite. Now he's saying, what's the culture like in Mexico? What tourist attractions do you have there? And Gwenola teaches this student. So she tells me there has been a shift.
It has changed, it's unbelievable. We don't understand
no, we do, we've done it.
How no, but how it's unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, if you really knew the student before.
Yeah, but intercultural awareness was very different.
Now, something else which was very interesting but also a bit problematic, but we don't want to go into the problems too much. Later, by email if you want. Ellie.
Oh yes, some of my students that were involved in this, they are looking forward to doing the Celta course, possibly.
It's certificate in teaching English to under learners.
In the second year.
Yes.
So we thought that this would be a good opportunity for them to have some contact with learners of English. And they were able to communicate with them and get some written compositions sent over by email, and they went to work then correcting the mistakes and giving them feedback. It was slightly problematic because some of the Coventry students' corrections needed correcting as well. So we couldn't really let them go completely autonomous with this. I had to say, no, wait a minute, let me see them first before we send them back to the Mexican students. Because we knew that the Mexican students would show them to their tutors there in Mexico City, so we had to be a bit careful about that.
Well, as an outcome, the Mexican students wrote an assessed piece of reflecting on the learning of English, which was assessed as part of their post-beginners B1 English in Mexico. So both sides were assessed and produced outcomes which were assessed. Vicky, 2 minutes? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4. Okay, intercultural issues arising. I mean, critical instance, we've hinted at them. We've not gone into the full-blown. We don't want to do that. We just, if you want to know more, we'll tell you separately. But anyway, need to set ground rules. Very interesting. But then we were wondering whose rules. When we were taken aback by some of the exchanges, whether they were ours or the tutors, or we're thinking, right, how do we now intervene? Because it's our culture, and they already think we're a very important country. Is it all right to then say you don't do things this way? Because they already have this kind of idea that we are already doing things to them, because they really do have this perception that England is in a position of power. It was fascinating to us, but I don't think our students perceive that. No. At least they don't think much of it.
And some of us feel uncomfortable with that.
That's right, yes. And the other thing, the arena etiquette, really different ways of approaching the discourse. Whether in Spanish or in English or French, what happened there was interesting and troublesome. And interesting, and how do we take this forward? Do we teach the arena etiquette for the global digital world? It is an employability issue as well. Lack of time, all of us, we're all very busy people, even the students. The time difference, 6-7 hours, can kill a chat, can kill a Skype exchange, can also mean that you misunderstand because one is there at midnight and nobody's online. We've had little issues like that. But also what we're getting to is the conceptualization of culture as threshold concept. Do we all struggle with this? And I'm now thinking I have to go on a course of philosophical anthropology because I need to learn more myself. I feel a bit, it's taken, all this data is really staring at us, and it's so big what we're seeing. We want to go on a course and see what happens. So, value added though, on a positive note, this is our partner. The best we could do was this Skype representation. Very interesting, also interculturally. Their representation on Skype doesn't necessarily correspond to what you actually see when you click, but that's another story. But, so promoting this type of intercultural communication is like an avatar kind of photo, but promoting these types of intercultural communication helps students to overcome stereotypes, and that came very strongly through, which has happened before in tandem learning. But what is happening here is they're already known English people, but doing it online like this has given them a different perspective, kind of current, up-to-date perspective of what's happening in England. The poppy, they never knew, there was the poppy business in November, they never heard of it in any textbook. Guy Fawkes, how it happened, they never heard, it is not really discussed at length in any textbook. So they said they learned things they would have never learned in any other way. So the value added was quite positive. So final reflection over to Elwin.
Yeah, obviously it's given us lots of food for thought, and Marina's mentioned transformations that have occurred inside ourselves as we've observed this. And we've realised that we've approached it ourselves with our own stereotypes that have been subject now to change and transformation. And these are some points really that we've been discussing in meetings that we've had over it. The mismatch in the ideas about culture, the Mexican students seem to have very sort of classical ideas about culture in terms of archaeology, food, history, whereas the students from Coventry were more focused on contemporary culture, X Factor, Beatles, the Midlands Air Museum, and whatnot. And we've been looking at Byram quite a lot, and this quote from Byram stood out for me personally about stereotypes. I came into this with my own stereotypes and also trying to second guess what Mexican students think about Britain and students in Britain, and it's all being mixed up now. And we're looking forward to the next part where we'll hopefully learn much more about what the Mexican students really think. We'll get it from the horse's mouth, as it were.
And with this bibliography we've given you, but just I'd like to bring back up what we had at the beginning while we take questions, if there is any time you can say. It's just, this reflects the pilot, but even the pilot is reflecting what we're finding in the second phase, because the pilot went on in the summer, but unfortunately all our students had gone, because by the time we set it up, our students had gone, but they still did some of it. But big expectation from Mexico, and as you can see, Mexico was much more present in the pilot. I think it's likely to be, we're starting analysing later now, September now, I think we'll be there. English though is there, and this idea of English, something which came up, and I'll finish with that. We didn't know that Mexican students, possibly because we are ignorant and we didn't know the history of Spanish in Mexico as well as we should, but Mexican students perceive English from England to be more interesting, better to learn than English from the States because of things which have gone on between Mexico and the States. And that's a very interesting other historical, social-political, intercultural dimension. So they will buy into the exchange like this, but our partners in Mexico say, if we'd asked a union in the States, we're not sure we could have been so rich, because they would have been more cagey in their relationship. And they wouldn't have built friendships like they have. Because this idea of friendship is very important for the Mexicans. They want friends, real friends. And in fact, they invited us to go over, and fingers crossed, if I convince the deans to give me all the money, I might manage to pay my students there. And my staff and my colleagues.
I'm trying to get the begging bowl out of you. Thank you ever so much. We've got about 5 minutes for questions. I'm going in about 6 weeks' time, so I'll send you a request.
To Mexico? Oh, wow.
Any questions? Well, I'm sure there's lots of questions.
As you said, the students generated the content here. Did they sort of stay with the sort of content that you showed us, or did they discuss other things like different ways of behaving and so on?
They did a bit, particularly, well, they started with the event, but then how do you behave around the event, so the poppy came out.
Yes.
And also a lot was spoken, they spoke a lot about the difference between American English and English, and also Spanish English and Mexican English, Spanish, Castilian Spanish and Mexican Spanish. So other things emerged which we not really insisted on, or
We didn't expect.
I didn't expect, yes. So yes, both.
And you showed us a little bit, you showed us the page which showed how they did a group work together. And,
Yes.
And that was sort of, did that contrast with the Mexican model?
The Mexican logistically have fewer labs, and they seem to be very pressurized for time, for what they can do. And also, I mean, I I think that there's a different level of IT know-how between the two partners. And there's other intercultural issues, which I can discuss to you afterwards over coffee with you. Okay. So, yes, but no, we think we want, now that we know what we want to talk about, and we want to structure it more. This was the kind of organic phase. Now we take it forward in a more structured way. And we might take more models from Odell on how we structure a task, because we did offer them tasks, they ignored them, totally. They went their own way, because we told them they could. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah?
It was Thank you. I was interested in the comment you made about the fact that they weren't aware of the hybridity of the English culture. So you said, you know, the multicultural aspect of the English students. And how much do you think that may then reflect on possible hybridity or increasing hybridity in their own culture?
That's a question for the questionnaire to ask.
But there was in the questionnaire that we gave them, we sent them a survey monkey questionnaire, and there was some sections for them to reflect on. And a lot of comments were, oh, it was interesting to meet with real people. We didn't really understand that this was how England was. We had a textbook knowledge. They seemed to be quite positive in the fact that they'd learned something new about this country that they'd never really.
But it definitely raised their awareness of how multicultural Britain is.
Yeah.
Because particularly in Coventry, where 30–40% of our students are multicultural, not more. And we have the highest intake of international students in the Midlands. So, it is a very, very international environment. And the Mexicans were very much Mexico City. We like our uni. They're all from Mexico City, like they would be in Italy probably. They're all local. Majority of them, not very far away. And they didn't realize that here is the other, it's quite different. And then they started also to understand why the Coventry students at Coventry University didn't know anything about Coventry. That was quite a revelation to them. That's why
in
the
comparison to
mismatch.
their own knowledge, maybe, of their own
Yes.
locale.
Exactly.
Yes, it's an interesting exercise to encourage them to reflect on that.
But we're now at the phase we're going to interview all the students involved in a variety of ways, online questionnaires and also possibly Skype, face-to-face or possibly face-to-face there. We'll go with Vicky. So, we'll have to collect the data as well to make sure we analyse when legal.
There was quite a few discussion threads that went on to there was a student from Hungary and Bulgaria and Romania, and they were asking questions about those countries. So they were quite interested to have not just exposure to British culture or England, but also to countries that they'd never met anybody from Romania or Bulgaria. So there was quite a lot of discussion about those countries as well.
But Sarah, this is just starting to get a global viewpoint, because the whole question of English, it's obviously who's English, but they weren't talking about English as a lingua franca, they weren't talking about everyone's English, they were English and American English. We hadn't got further.
Definitely lingua franca is one big thing we have present. And yes, English is a lingua franca, yes.
Did you ever, did the students ever discuss about world Englishes or prejudices or discrimination when it comes to language preference, for example?
Students didn't stop it. And we have some airy moments, if I could put it that way. It was quite interesting because me being Italian, to be perceived as this cultural, hegemonic, power, arrogant, and wait a minute, I'm Italian. But because I work here, we had some interesting, really things which took us back via email. I got some emails. And then it was repairing, and this idea of how do you repair, how do you move on. We could have stopped the project many times.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of threshold concepts with the staff involved.
For
The students involved.
I think we should just stay out of it.
But just to give you an example, the final example, which is testing us a lot, they still not signed the contract, and they bring in the bureaucracy, which means poor people of Warwick still not have their money. Please don't shop yourself.
Spend hours on this, that's not bad.
But it does little tension, like that financial tension can also arise, and are they cultural, then they're perceived as cultural, but the Mexicans, interestingly enough, what do you want us? We are like this, you have to wait 6 months, and you're lucky, perhaps in the next 6 months. And we only want to sit